Hundreds, including media personnel, attend funeral service for Justin Kili. NEC to review compensation claims by landowners. And PNG's #1 tennis player prepares to defend her title.
This is National MTV News with Tokana Hasavi.
Good evening and welcome. This is Thursday's news. Thanks for your company. Words cannot describe this great man, the work he did to the PNG media, how influential he was to those who worked with him, and the many young people he mentored. These were the words from Chelsea Kili, daughter of renowned radio legend and PNG media personality, Justin Hansu Kili. To many who knew him, JK was a small man with a big heart. To the rest of PNG radio listeners, he was a reassuring voice.
Media personnel were among hundreds who attended the Requiem Holy Mass for radio legend, the late Justin Hansu Kili, at St. Joseph's Catholic Parish in Port Moresby. The true voice of Papua New Guinea was given final tributes for his life, great work and contribution to the development of the media industry in the country. The story of his life was touching, a humble man and mentor who had the heart for others. All this he did with faith as a devoted Catholic follower that shaped him from the humble beginnings back at Lemamanu village in Buka, Autonomous Region of Bougainville. JK was also very creative, developing programs in both radio and television that were favorites to many listeners and viewers. Media Workers Association representative Alfred Kaneniba said JK was actively involved with media organizations that promoted and protected journalists' interests under the PNG Media Council. This includes the establishment of the PNG Journalists Association that should address issues relating to journalism practice. Special thanks were offered to the Kili family for this great man. Fabian Hakalitz, National MTV News.
Compulsory acquisition of land will be part of an NEC submission to review compensation claims in the country. Works Minister Francis Awesa told MTV News the submission will consider fair compensations and genuine claims. The aim of the submission will be to stop all unnecessary claims that are preventing the progress of roadworks in the country.
The Works Minister described the culture of compensation claims in the country as getting out of hand.
Fair compensation, yes, but unreasonable compensation, no.
Over the years, the Department of Works has had to deal with an increasing amount of claims that are also increasing in amount. Claims of over 50 million kina in compensation for a 17-kilometer stretch of road is an example of how much compensation eats into money allocated for building roads. Minister Awesa says the government needs to take action.
And compensation, to me, has become very, very entrenched. By that I mean it's becoming a big industry.
Money is not the only challenge the department has to overcome when there are claims for compensation. When there are delays to settling the claims or when the settlement does not meet the expectation of the people, the lives of those involved in roadworks are put at risk. The minister says the government does recognize those who are genuine in their claims and they will be settled accordingly. This will mean a more efficient collaboration among the Department of Works, the Lands Department, and the Valuer General's Department.
I am mindful also that people in the Works Department have been collaborating with people living along the road corridors to assist them to get substantial amount of money which they don't deserve.
There is an agreement that compensation has become an industry in the country. Director of the Institute of National Affairs, Paul Barker, agrees that there are genuine claims that needs to be separated from those who are abusing the system.
So it's got to be done in a reasonable way, and the process should be to try and formalize and standardize the process so that you don't get these extreme demands by some groups.
Sarah Aupong, National MTV News.
Minister for Trade, Richard Maru, is satisfied with the progress of work done on the Pacific Marine Industrial Zone in Madang. The minister visited the project site earlier this year and said drilling and other prerequisite studies by the contractor are expected to be completed by the end of the month. Mr. Maru said we'll travel again to Medang next week to discuss spin-off benefit activities from PMIZ with the Morobe provincial government.
In a media conference held today at the Minister's office, he was accompanied by the Secretary of the Department, John Andreas. Minister Maru said he visited the Pacific Marine Industrial Zone, or PMIZ, in Medang earlier this year and is pleased with the progress so far.
As we announced to the country last year, the PMIZ loan has been reinstated by the China Exim Bank. As a result, the contractor has been in Medang since December, working on the prerequisite studies, doing drilling.
The contractor is China Shenyang International Economic and Technical Cooperation Corporation Limited. Once the contractor completes the final feasibility studies at the end of this month, then the final design will begin.
We'll be instructing the Secretary now to finalize the list of spin-off businesses that we want to offer to the three impact communities of Medang.
The department has tendered for an independent power supplier and a water provider for PMIZ as critical utilities to provide consistency and protect investments. Bids have been received and the department is preparing to take its recommendations to government. Mr. Maru will be meeting with the Medang Governor and MP next week to discuss arrangements of spin-off benefits for the people as equal partners in the PMIZ project.
Because we want to make sure that the Medang people get maximum benefit from this project, we will be traveling there to meet with the governor and the member, to have discussions with them, to brief them on what our views are as a ministry and department.
The government has been working tirelessly on the PMIZ project for the last 2 years and is determined to get the project off the ground by April. Delhi Bagu, National EMTV News.
People using public transport services are advised to ensure the vehicles they are travelling in are insured. Traffic officers conducting road checks in Port Moresby raised this concern after a number of road accidents occurred involving uninsured vehicles.
It's the simple checks that can save one's life. Traffic officers say all passengers travelling within NCD and Central Province have the right to ask drivers of public transports if the vehicle they are travelling in is insured, the driver has a current driver's license, and if the vehicle is properly registered. During the roadblock at Gordon's Freeway in Port Moresby today, a number of taxi drivers were fined for driving vehicles with a taxi plate but registered initially as a private vehicle. But not all checks go smoothly. The driver of this PMV bus was upset when officers removed the registration on his vehicle. This then led to a war of words between the PMV crew and traffic officers. Traffic police were later called in to ease the tension. Such roadblocks are conducted to check vehicle road worthiness. A number of roadblocks and thorough vehicle checks are expected to occur in the days leading up to the Pacific Games. Tekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
In recent weeks, we have featured several stories of people missing at sea and for some, their rescues. Now, the agency that regulates movements in Papua New Guinea waters, the National Maritime Safety Authority, is concerned about these events that already indicates ignorance to laws and weather warnings. On tonight's EMTV News special report, Fabian Hakalit speaks with the NMSA on this matter.
The Small Craft Act 2010 is the law that provides safety of persons using small craft in Papua New Guinea for construction, equipping, operation and registration related matters. State agency National Maritime Safety Authority is serious because of the many incidents involving people using small crafts traveling within the PNG waters, missing and found. Recent incidents involved 11 people from Medang found in West New Britain after drifting for over 10 days in a 23-foot banana boat powered by two 40-horsepower motors. The boat was returning from Baluan Island in Manus on a Bitterna trade mission. In Central Province, 2 people are still missing after their boat capsized. Between New Britain and the Huon Peninsula, northern New Guinea, is the Vitia Strait. A boat carrying 5 people also encountered similar problems but was rescued. In Western Province, 21 people on 2 separate boats drifted after encountering engine problems between Baimuru to Gulf Province but were rescued by Octedi vessels. Acting General Manager Captain Nur Rahman was disappointed as people were not taking off warning messages and travelling despite messages on the change in weather patterns.
When in spite of repeated warnings, safety messages on the TV, broadcast regularly on the FM radio and the radio right from beginning of Christmas festivities till up to last week, every 2 hours, we are advising general public not to take an unsafe boat, not to overload the boat, not to go out in bad weather without estimation of fuel. So all these are adding up to the frustration, and you rightly said, it's not only the cost to the government, it's the cost to a family. It's a human life. There cannot be any cost to a human life.
The National Weather Service has advised for people to take precautions while expressing its concern over cumulative rainfall projections in the New Guinea Islands and southern regions. The National Maritime Safety Authority will enforce the Small Craft Act 2010 to ensure boat operators and the travelling public comply with this law. A warning is that for those who take out unsafe craft to sea, penalties will apply as a result of breaching the law.
For people taking an unsafe boat out to sea. So the penalties are very serious, and it's not only monetary, it is imprisonment as well as confiscating the boat if it is found.
On Part 4 of the Small Craft Act 2010, construction and safety of small craft offences, where a small craft is operated or goes to sea without complying to any applicable construction or safety standard, the owners and captain will be arrested, charged and locked behind bars.
To use safety to go on a boat, even the persons who are passengers, not to go on a boat which does not have adequate safety measures or have fuel or know where they are going, all those things, because it is ultimately their lives, the lives of their children and family that are involved.
On the establishment of provincial small craft regulation boards, registrars, inspectors and other staff, Captain Namur said it's important every disaster office receives an alert notice before any voyage. Autonomous Region of Bougainville is the only centre that is implementing this, and the rest of other provinces must also implement this call.
That's why all the provinces now have a VHF chain network, that if any province or if any provincial disaster officer or an NMSA office learns about an incident, it can immediately send out that information relay it through the VHF channels.
For Section 38 of the PNG Constitution, the Small Craft Act 2010 is a law made to give effect to the public interest in safety, order and welfare, to the extent that this act regulates or restricts any of the following rights to freedoms.
Please be wise. Please don't take the risk. It's not worth it. Your family members, yourself, your life is very important.
Fabian Hakelitz, National EMTV News.
Among stories after the break, a fine artist who's also living with a disability seeks justice after her paintings were destroyed. That and more coming up next. Good to have you back with the news. A female artist from Enga province has lost all her paintings, tools and household goods after the death of her husband. Winnie Pependo, 42, has been painting for over 15 years despite her hearing impairment. Her equipment was destroyed by her husband's relative who accused her of contributing to his death.
Winnie is a person living with disability. She has been both hearing and speech impaired since birth. Despite all that, she served as the president of the Deaf Association in Port Moresby. She used her home as an office and was dedicated to her talent as an artist. She only communicates through email and text messages to her clients, mostly from overseas, and it also includes some politicians in hard work was burnt to ashes after her husband died.
She doesn't know whom to run to. She doesn't know how to defend herself. The legal beats are there that she cannot meet.
Winnie graduated in 1994 from University of Papua New Guinea with diploma in fine arts. Most of her paintings feature PNG's vast culture and tales. She also sketches and does portrait. However, after the death of her husband, his relatives blamed her for putting him under pressure before they destroyed her possession. New tenants evicted Winnie and took over the house 2 weeks before the husband died, claiming he sold the house without her consent. The matter is now before the district court. However, she is pushing for the case to be heard in the national court.
People out there who are in a position of responsibility, human rights issues, welfare, Attorney General, and the general public who can cash in too to support pay for the legal bills so that justice can be found.
Vasinata Yama, National EMTV News.
The housing project for staff of the Ombudsman Commission at Geruhu Stage 3B is nearing completion. The housing project is the first to be undertaken by National Housing Corporation's subsidiary, National Housing Estate Limited. This comes at a time when NHEL is in talks with a Korean and Japanese consortium to build a 15-story apartment at Gabutu in the nation's capital.
Although the project has been delayed by 6 weeks, the executive management team from National Housing Estate Limited were impressed with what they saw. When they arrived at the project site, there was some progress made on the houses as workmen contractors from CPL's hardware house were busy at work. At the cost of 3 million kina, the housing project for 8 houses will be fully finished and upon completion will be handed over to the Ombudsman Commission. This is the first project undertaken by the government's real estate agency. Such projects will be developed in NCD and other parts of the country. National Housing Estate has engaged certain contractors to build more houses, projects that are set to change the face of Port Moresby.
Like 15-story projects with Korean and Japanese consortium down in Gabutu, and some other similar projects that will be kicking off soon. We are already well into the negotiation stage and also well into the preparation stage of these projects.
For all these properties in prime location, which I think the executive chairman has already mentioned, the Tela Beach and our Drive, Gabutu, and all this is already into its advanced stage of negotiations.
The Geruhu Stage 3B housing project is expected to be completed in mid-March. Bridget Komatap, National EMTV News.
Minister for Trade, Commerce and Industry and member for Yanguru Sausia, Richard Maru, today announced a tertiary school fee subsidy scheme. The scheme is the first of its kind for the electorate. It is aimed at assisting those rural families whose income have been devastated by the cocoa pod borer, which has destroyed cocoa farms in the electorate.
Minister Maru announced today that his Yanguru Sausia district in the East Sepik province is finalizing details of a new tertiary school fee subsidy scheme to assist parents in his district pay for their children's university tuition fees.
My district, Yanguru Sausia district, the Joint District Planning and Budget Projects Committee has resolved in principle that we will now introduce a new school fee, tertiary school fee subsidy scheme.
The assistance is in recognition of those parents whose primary source of income is cocoa, which have been wiped out recently by the cocoa pod borer.
The grassroots parents only. They are the only ones who qualify for the scheme. So we'll be giving out application forms next week. When they fill the forms, the village councillor will say that yes, they will sign as witness to say that this parent lives in this village.
Details of the scheme and the forms will be made to applicants who will qualify for assistance under the scheme on the 29th of this month. Delhi Bagu, National EMTV News.
Sogeri Hotel is providing job opportunities for youths in the area through the trekking industry. The youths are engaged as those who help trekkers walk the famous Kokoda Trail.
Sogeri Hotel is providing job opportunities to local youths in the area. Many youths are working as porters for local and international trekkers who are walking the famous Kokoda Trail. It is also assisting with bags, sleeping mats, water containers and other necessary equipment for the walk.
People are, willing to or wishing to walk the trek. You guys are welcome. We got all the facilities.
Due to the success and development of trekking industry, it provides services in corporate rental rooms to dining and conference rooms. A food cafe area and bar provide refreshing moments for incoming guests.
About 17 rooms we have, can cater for up to about 36 guests, and 2 conference rooms. The other one can cater for about 50 and up, and the other one is 20 and below. We got bar, restaurant.
Sogeri police personnel are providing active security in the area. At the moment, there has been decrease in criminal activities. Commander of Sogeri Police Station Senior Inspector Stanley Baroro said his policemen have been responding quickly to crimes. Inspector Baroro said this is to protect government assets and operation of business houses and people in the community. The areas of operation cover the Sogeri area and further extend to the fringes of the Kokoda Trail in Northern Province.
Brew, spark, drunken, disorderly, or public place, gambling, display and cut down drastically. In the overall parks, you look in all place where all lines can visit, or some Crystal Rapids, Varirata National Park, Dam side, Antablo West Corner Road.
Meanwhile, the safety of people in the area has been guaranteed because of quick response by police. Sogeri hosts government properties like PNG Power and Edaranu facilities, the famous Kokoda Trail and Sogeri National High School. Business houses include Sogeri and Kokoda Trek hotels and the Koitaki Cattle Farm. Eric Aruma, National EMTV News.
Coffee production in Milne Bay is expected to expand through support from industry authorities. Industry Corporation aims to work with district administrations to increase the province's yield. CIC Chief Executive Officer Anton Benjamin and Milne Bay Governor Titus Philemon were at Agaun earlier this week to begin air freight for coffee bags. An agreement has been signed between the CIC and the provincial government to ensure that support is given to coffee growing areas like West Ferguson in the Esala district. The initiative will involve the Provincial Department of Agriculture and the CIC. There have been funding allocations of 300,000 kina set aside for coffee production this year by the provincial government and a further 700,000 kina for expansions over the next 3 years. People of Yalimbu district now have access to a rural banking facility thanks to BSP. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill, who is also the member for Yalimbu Pangia, when opening the sub-branch, told the people to take advantage of the government's low-interest rates housing scheme. With BSP Rural in the electorate, it will cut down travelling costs for people who frequent Mendi and Mount Hagen to do their banking.
Banking for the people in the Prime Minister's electorate of Yalimbu has never been easier. They take the risk of travelling to Mendi or Mount Hagen, which is about an hour's drive or more, to do their banking. With so much cash on hand, the risk of being robbed is extremely high. The new BSP Rural branch is the first container-style branch to be opened in the area. It will cut down travelling costs and the risk associated with travelling to and from the district. Prominent Southern Highlands MPs Governor William Powie and the local MP Prime Minister Peter O'Neill were there to officiate at the ceremony. BSP was represented by the Chief Executive Officer Robin Fleming and his team. With the new sub-branch, Mr. O'Neill told the people to take advantage of BSP's low-interest rate housing scheme.
Also, that's the kind of service you can stop place below you meet. Me all got citizen below Yalu Pangia. Government put in 200 million kina. Lo you 1 month, you can go na borrowing money lo 4% lo 40 years. 4% interest rate and me low too much lo anywhere in the world.
BSP Chief Executive Officer Robin Fleming emphasized that the services provided by BSP are in line with the Constitution, which calls for citizens to participate in equal economic services and opportunities.
It will depend on having a bank. BSP is providing that opportunity for the businesses, the entrepreneurs, the local people to be able to start develop more and more economic activity in the Alabu.
We will look after this facility, we will develop this facility and we will embrace it.
BSP Rural Branch in Yalibu brings to 44 the number of sub-branches in the country. Bridget Komatep, National EMTV News.
And now we check out the finance news. The Kina closed unchanged at $0.3835 in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, your Kina was buying $0.376, 0.461 Australian dollars, 0.3208 euro and 43.92 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, gold, coffee, cocoa and copper all closed lower. Crude oil and copper closed higher, while palm oil closed lower. And finally, on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 39 points higher, the ASX closed at 26 points higher, and the All Ordinaries closed at 23 points higher. You're watching National EMTV News. Stories making headlines overseas when we return, including the latest on Flight 8501. Also, France tracks down on terror groups and diaries of a prisoner released. That and more coming up next. Welcome back. Now, before we take a look at international headlines, Morabe's Provincial Police Commander, Chief Superintendent Kaiglo Ambane, says Morabe's police manpower needs to be boosted through a concerted effort in restructuring positions and building policing housing. The total police strength for the Morabe province outside of the Lae Metropolitan Command is a little over 200. Some police stations in districts are unmanned and some have aging officers who are struggling to maintain law and order. Mr. Ambane added the lack of police headquarters is also compounding the problem.
Plandiab emi isolated. Osem so inogat communication na Plandiab districts inogat police. Mika osem about 20 rural police stations na police posts staff. I think 6 plus something osem inogat man. Another 4 in masigat 1 plus kanosem. Another 3 kanosem ika 2 plus man kanosem. So, we play in straight, the police strength to match up on the whole population. But big plus something to upgrade him, and we play him provincial police headquarters. Currently, we play in Nogat.
Turning overseas now, an Indonesian official said Air Asia Flight 8501 climbed rapidly, then stalled before it crashed. The commercial jet lost contact with air traffic controllers on December 28 from Surabaya towards Singapore with 162 people on board. Investigations are continuing.
Indonesia's transportation minister says Air Asia Flight 8501 was climbing at 6,000 feet per minute, just seconds before it stalled and crashed into the Java Sea.
Right away, there would have been warnings going off. There would have been overspeed warnings. There would have been engine warnings. There would have been altitude and pitch alert.
A big problem because commercial aircraft like the Airbus 320 are designed to climb 1,000 to 2,000 feet per minute, less than half the speed the doomed aircraft was apparently ascending. When a plane goes up so dramatically, it can lose lift and come crashing back to the ground.
The way to recover is to put the nose down, or in the case of an Airbus that's flying on autopilot, to let the autopilot take over. But I suspect that was not an option here because there was just so much going on.
Investigators have been poring over the cockpit voice and flight data recorders, which collect information on the plane's speed and altitude. Indonesian authorities say the recorders did not pick up sounds of gunfire or an explosion, for the moment ruling out the most sinister scenario.
The voice from the cockpit does not show any sign of a terrorist attack. It is only the pilot, sounding very busy.
The pilot had asked permission to increase his altitude to try to avoid severe thunderstorms. Meanwhile, the painstaking search for remains continues. Only 53 of the 162 on board have been recovered. The largest piece of the wreckage, the fuselage, remains at the bottom of the ocean, where investigators suspect many of the bodies could be. The head of Indonesia's National Search and Rescue Agency says the search for victims will not stop.
After we close, we will continue our daily search and rescue effort. We will fulfill their hopes with all our best effort.
The problem has been the current, which has prevented divers from reaching the bottom, and at this point, sadly, the remains are decomposing. Well, as for the investigation, we are told the transcript of the pilot's conversation is about halfway complete. Now, that's going to be used along with the data from the recorders to come up with a preliminary report to be released in just days.
The French Prime Minister has announced that $500 million in emergency spending will be spent on tracking 3,000 jihadists in France. It's believed a dozen terror suspects could be hiding out far from authorities' reach and could pop up in ISIS propaganda videos.
Today, for the first time, the Paris prosecutor is identifying 4 suspects charged in connection with the Paris attacks, whose DNA was allegedly found on Amadei Coulibaly's car, gun, and glove found at the crime scene. But the prosecutor says authorities are still investigating whether the 4 suspects were actually complicit in the attacks. He says, "We think that there is a group of individuals who contributed as part of an agreement, and that this has effectively served the terrorists to commit the attack. But it's the others who are still on the run, suspected cohorts of Amadei Coulibaly and the Kouachi brothers, that have authorities on edge." Sources tell CNN it's believed the terrorists urged around half a dozen of their associates to leave France just before the attacks, including Coulibaly's wife, Haya Boumediene. A law enforcement source tells CNN the concern is they could all be hiding in the terrorist safe haven of Syria and soon try to attack the West. Meanwhile, 2 weeks after the attacks, Paris remains under heightened security, with soldiers and police guarding landmarks and Jewish sites.
Seeing on CNN all the security in the Eiffel Tower and around the city, I've never once felt threatened.
Today, the French Prime Minister announced new details of suspected jihadis living in France. He says 3,000 people with jihadist ties need to be under surveillance, and the number of people linked to terror networks in Iraq and Syria has jumped 130% in just 1 year.
If they're talking they have 3,000 people they need to cover, and you have the massive amount of resources it takes, people, vehicles, equipment, photography equipment, radio equipment, and extensive training, this is no small chore on their part.
Another jihadi hotbed, Belgium. Tuesday night, Belgian police evacuated a neighborhood as they raided a home at the request of French authorities, part of the wider anti-terrorism operation. This as the manhunt continues for suspected Belgian ISIS operative, Abdelhad Abaoud. Authorities believe he was directing a plot from Greece that may have included attempts to murder Belgian police officers.
In his State of the Union address, President Obama announced his plans to close Guantanamo Bay. One of the detainees is speaking out about the conditions there in a new book. It's called Guantanamo Diaries. It's been heavily censored, but it tells a harrowing story of life behind the prison walls.
I had a mask over my mouth and my nose, plus a bag.
Sleep deprivation, beatings, starvation, and routine humiliation. It's the first time a serving Guantanamo detainee has released an account of his experiences from inside, and it paints a grim picture.
One of them hit me hard across the face and quickly put the goggles on my eyes, earmuffs on my ears, and a small bag over my head. I couldn't tell who did what. They tightened the chains around my ankles and my wrists. Afterwards, I started to bleed.
These are the words of Mohamedou Ould Slahi, who's been held by the United States in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, since 2002. He was accused of being a member of Al-Qaeda and of recruiting 3 of the hijackers behind the 9/11 terrorist attacks. But he's never been charged, and his lawyer says there is no evidence against him.
He filed a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, which is where you go to the court and say, I'm being held illegally, let me out. And Judge Robertson in the District of Columbia Court ordered that he be released immediately. That was in 2010.
Hollander says the case has been caught in legal limbo ever since. Now, Slahi's book describing his first few years in Guantanamo is being published around the world. It's based on a manuscript handwritten in his cell in 2005. His lawyers battled the U.S. government for nearly 7 years to get the text released, which it did only with significant portions redacted.
I was starved for long periods.
In it, Slahi describes the brutality of his treatment at the hands of interrogators.
I thought they were going to execute me. Thanks to the beating, I wasn't able to stand, so Redacted and the other guard dragged me out with my toes tracing the way and threw me in a truck, which immediately took off. The beating party would go on for the next 3 or 4 hours.
In one particularly harrowing account, he describes being blindfolded, put on a high-speed boat, and severely beaten.
Inside the boat, Redacted made me drink salt water. I believe it was directly from the ocean. It was so nasty I threw up. They stuffed the air between my clothes and me with ice cubes from my neck to my ankles, and whenever the ice melted, they put in new, hard cubes. Moreover, every once in a while, one of the guards smashed me, most of the time in the face.
When CNN asked the U.S. Department of Defense to respond to Slahi's allegations of torture, they pointed to a number of investigations into detainee treatment at Guantanamo. One of these, a Department of Justice review from 2008, states that during one interrogation in August 2003, Slahi was indeed made to ride on a boat wearing blackout goggles, though it doesn't go into more detail. Slahi's account is vivid, but it's what we can't read that is perhaps just as significant.
I believe that the government redacts to keep secret what it doesn't want us to know. Whether that's because they have a reason to keep it secret that's valid, or whether it's because it would embarrass the government, I don't know. I do know that the government has kept secret from people what has embarrassed it about torture.
The DoD told CNN that Slahi's manuscript was reviewed, quote, to ensure that the information released would not harm U.S. personnel or damage U.S. national security, unquote. They said they, quote, continue to detain Mohamedou Slahi under the Authorization for the Use of Military Force of 2001 as informed by the laws of war. And went on to say that, quote, Slahi is eligible to appear before a periodic review board to assess whether his continued detention at Guantanamo remains necessary. Slahi's lawyers and family, for their part, are calling for him to be released immediately and for Guantanamo Bay to be closed.
And that report wraps up our news segment tonight. True Kai Sports is coming up next. And US-based tennis star Abigail Terra-Apisa is in the country to prepare for matches in the region and also defend her Pacific Games title. That's coming up next. Stay with us.
True Kai Sports.
Welcome to True Kai Sports. Papua New Guinea's #1 female tennis player, Abigail Terra-Apisa, is in the country. She is preparing for the Asia-Pacific Tennis League, which will be held next week in Australia. 22-year-old Abigail is also preparing to defend her gold medal in this year's Pacific Games.
Abigail is PNG and the Pacific's #1 tennis player. She will be used in the league as the first step towards turning professional, and the 22-year-old is looking forward to that tournament. Apisa was the winner in the singles category in the last Pacific Games and also won gold in the doubles with sister Marcia. She is confident of retaining her titles.
Oh yeah, that's my goal. I'm trying to win that gold here, especially at home. So I'm really excited. And I know, talking to some of the other athletes, my teammates and other sports too, you know, it's at home and we have a family here and everybody's really excited. And I'm sure they are too, and I'm sure they'll be working hard. So am I. So, you know, I think we're moving in the right direction.
She will now be focusing on getting her rhythm together and working extra hard in training for the Games. Abigail will now be taking part in the Asia-Pacific League, which will be played in Melbourne Park in Australia. She will be one of the 4 Pacific Islanders who will be representing the Pacific Oceania Dolphins. Mike Oime, National EMTV Sports.
The Northern Mariana Islands is one of 19 teams competing in the 2015 Pacific Games. It is one of the 5 inhabited U.S. territories with a small population of 54,000 and will be sending a small contingent to partake in 7 sports at the Games in July. The president of the Sports Association, Michael White, said that if they don't submit a final entry number before January 16, this would mean the federation would not compete in the 15th Pacific Games. Since participating in the Games, the Marianas have won only 3 medals, 1 silver and 1 bronze in 2003, 1 gold in 2011 at the South Pacific Games in New Caledonia. While the other Pacific nations are preparing for the quadrennial event, PNG has eased into preparations after their commissioning. The national volleyball team is looking to maintain their status as the current kings of the Pacific at the Pacific Games this year, after taking the title of New Caledonia in the last mini-games in Wallis and Futuna. The team to compete at the Pacific Games will be boosted by a few upcoming youngsters from Vabukori. Junior Harold Gimmer is one of the few who stands a chance of debuting for Team Amoa for PNG.
Last year, Team Amoa PNG travelled to the Philippines to compete in the FIVB Asian Qualifier. This year, the national volleyball team are out to prove that they're a force to be reckoned with at the Pacific Games come July. While the PNG Games showcased a lot of potential and up-and-coming talent, the team anticipating the Pacific Games is dominated yet again by Vabukori Amateur Volleyball Association players. While the national beach volleyball team is undergoing training at the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia, they're expected to return next week after competing in several local tournaments. Dion Kombeng, National EMTV Sports.
And we'll bring you more True Kind Sports action after the break.
True Kind Sports.
Good to have you back with True Kind Sports. The SPPNG Hunters' prodigal son, Gary Lowe, has admitted his mistake and wants to wear the Hunters' colours again. Lowe, who had made his intention known to move to England, arrived this morning apologising to the Hunters management and PNG RFL for his decision to leave the club.
Gary Lowe openly admitted that what he did was wrong and asked for forgiveness from the SPPNG Hunters management, PNG RFL and the Sports Ministry.
My fault that it is my fault that I just go to London, so if they want me to come back, yes, it's my pleasure to go back, but otherwise that's my fault that I took a wrong decision to go.
The Hunters wing sensation arrived this morning and was welcomed by Sports Minister Justin Chichenko. Lowe says his intention to leave the club was based on advancing his rugby league career abroad. However, the standard of the competition he went for was below that of the Inter Super Cup.
Like the tire that I went is too low, very low tire, third tire competition, so like already up. I mean the Hunters is already up, so second to NRL, so the tire that I went is too low, so feeling I can't settle, so I'm feeling uneasy, so make up my mind to come back.
Lowe was not officially released from the club. The decision he made and the 2 months he spent away from the club will now be considered by the Hunters coaching staff to decide whether to take him back or not. Sports Minister Justin Chichenko, who has been vocal on the players removed from Hunters without going through proper procedure, says it was a lesson learned and there should not be a repeat.
It's up to the coach, of course, to take Gary back, but you know, people have been upset about this process and what's happened. So there's going to be some healing and some understanding come into it. Huh? So, but I would like to see him back there, yes. But that's up to the coach, and that's up to the SP Hunters. It's up to Gary too, to make it work for him.
Minister Chichenko says Lowe is an asset to the club and indeed a part of the jigsaw puzzle of the SPPNG Hunters team. Meanwhile, the Hunters are in camp and gearing up for the trials before getting stuck into the 2015 Inter Super Cup in March. Tere Alex, National EMTV Sports.
Overseas, a seagull has made an incredible recovery after being hit by a ball at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. The incident happened at the Big Bash League involving international stars playing alongside Australia's homegrown talent.
Risen from the dead in the Big Bash. A cracking pull shot from Adam Voges struck the bird. Stars fielder Rob Quiney presumed the worst and carried the unconscious seagull to the boundary rope. But a few minutes later, the crowd erupted.
Something big's happening. Is it from the crowd?
No, it's the seagull. He's up on his feet. This is him. That's him.
That's an unbelievable effort.
That's a bigger recovery since Rick McCosker in the centenary test here at the MCG.
Back from the brink, the seagull then took revenge on Quiney. The Melbourne Stars eventually enjoying a 3-wicket win.
And that Seagulls recovery wraps up our news segment tonight. But don't go away. We'll have all the weather details after these short messages.
True Kai Sports. True Kai Sports.
This weather information is brought to you by Tablebirds.
Looking at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow in southern region, Port Moresby cloudy weather with rain periods. In Mombasa, brief evening showers expected in Madang, Lake City, cloudy weather with rain periods. In the New Guinea Islands, cloudy periods expected in Kavieng and Lorengau, brief evening showers in Buka. And lastly, in the Highlands, cloudy with rain periods expected in Mount Hagen. Well, that's the way it is this Thursday, the 22nd of January 2015. On behalf of the news crew, I'm Tokana Hasavi. Thanks for your company. You take care and stay safe. Good night.